Heaven is in you, and when you come to the revelation of who he is, then it opens up. Worship. I will show you the freedom that you miss by trying to be inclined to die. And through his life, you now are saved. And things in this community and things in religion to shape. Change your theology. Change the way you believe. Because if your belief don't produce what you need and what you actually want in life, then you got to change it. Every businessman, he understands that if he wants to, he has to learn to diversify toward each generation. If he's going to stay in business, why? Because each generation has a different taste than they did the other generation. Amen? We don't see Model T 4s on the highway no more, right? So they ain't selling them no more, right? So what does the dealership do? They change the way they did their cars. Get my point? So in other words, if you don't learn to diversify your life, change, and quit setting your own ways, there's many times you're going to be very sad. Many times you're going to be very hurt. Because you have to learn to change the way you do things. Because in changing the way you do things, you ultimately change the way you succeed. You may have succeeded one time by being bit by brown nose, but sooner or later they caught a hold to it. They got tired of you brown nosing. You took all the brown off their behind. What you believe shows you how to love somebody. And you need that theology to learn how to love people. Then you have a bad theology. Love is what bore you into the world before you ever had a theology. And love is what keeps you and should keep you and guide you before you become theologically or biblically correct. Most of the process today, they're looking to the Bible to learn how to love people. And I'm going to share with you a guy in the book called David. Everybody is familiar with David. Psalm chapter 19. Psalm chapter 19. The transition from God's hand has already been made from his to yours. How many of you still are waiting for God to do something and hoping that he brings change? Raise your hand. Be honest. You're hoping and waiting for God to bring change. I want to tell you. It's sad to tell you, but I'm going to tell you this. Okay? I'm going to be open and honest with you. As long as you wait for the change, it'll never happen. God is not bringing the change. God made the transition and changed and became just like you and I in the physical form. And in that physical form, what he did, he perfected humanity. He deposited into humanity. And he says, you shall do what? Greater works than I. You, who did he say is going to do it? You will do greater works than I. The problem is you bought into a system that told you you needed God to do something, but it never told you that God had already did it. Amen. It never told you that you had already been made whole, that you were complete, that you have the fullness of God, and you can't get any fuller than you are now. So the way you believe, your theology and the way you believe and talk has caused you to be separate or feel like you're out of the kingdom and waiting to transition into the kingdom. Jesus told two men standing there that were vehemently against him, and they were the Pharisees, who were later called the devil. They asked him, where is this kingdom of heaven? And he told them that were vehemently against him that the kingdom of heaven is within you. He told two people that didn't even believe him. Two people that fought to kill him, that fought to scrutinize everything that he'd done. He told them that the kingdom of heaven, they asked him, where is this kingdom of heaven, Jesus? He said, it is within you. These are people that didn't believe in him. But they tell you, you got to die and go to heaven. But Jesus told them that heaven was within them. And they were alive. I know it's a different theology. I know it's hard for you to believe because you've been taught differently. See, I'm not fighting against you. I'm fighting against your theology. But in fact, I'll tell you, I ain't fighting. I'll put it this way. I always say, if it works for you, but if it ain't been working for you, you got to let that thing go. You got to choose to let that thing go. I'm in Psalm chapter 19. Psalm chapter 19, verse 1. The heavens declare the glory of God, and the firmament showeth his handiwork. In other words, this writer looked up and says, wait a minute, God is so good and so awesome. He threw the stars there, and we later called it part of it in this late autumn, the Big Dipper. Then he threw some stars over there in another part of the month, and now we call it Aries. Now he threw something over here, and we call it Pisces. Now we threw something over here, we call it Sagittarius. And guess what many of you still do? You still go read your horoscopes. You still go, Scorpion, you still go read your horoscope. This writer says, even God is he's so great that he created the stars, and we are now allowed to name them in our own aspect. And now many people still trust what day unto day uttereth speech, and night unto night showeth knowledge. There is no speech, nor language, where their voice is not heard. It's almost like the parable that says that if a tree falls in the woods, does it, and nobody's there to hear it, does it make a noise? Now watch this. If I sound something to you, but there's no change, did you hear me? How do you know that someone's heard you or learned what you taught them? You see them doing it. Because you're going to do what? What you know. Everything you hear, you can't do because you what? You don't know it. To know something means I become intimate with it, I become one with it. In other words, I surrender myself to it. Now, what have you surrendered yourself to that you're now trying to get away from? What have you yielded yourself to, yielded your members to, and now you obey it to the fullest, and you can't get rid of it because you don't have it no more. It now has you. You become a slave to it. You're a slave to anger. You're a slave to fear. I said, why are you afraid? I said, afraid of what? If you're going to die, you're going to what? So why be afraid? See, whatever you give yourself over to, it what? It controls you. Now, what have you given yourself over to that has been controlling you, but it's not profited you or taking you where you wanted to go, but you can't turn it or seem to break it or shake it because it got you, so it still pulls you, even though you don't want to be in poverty, even though you want to balance your check, you still can't. The problem is, you have a theology. And the theology is about a God. You won't accept the theology of Jesus, but you've accepted the theology of a man. Because I'm going to share something with you in a minute that's going to blow your mind. Did you know that God didn't need the Bible to tell you who he was? Woo! God don't need the Bible to tell you who he is. The writer just said he looked where and saw God. He looked at the stars and he saw God. But you now trying to find the Bible to find God. You're trying to read the Bible to discover who God is, to discover what love is, to discover how to forgive, to discover how to walk free. Just be free. Somebody whisper, just be free. Just be free. Just be free. You don't have to work to be free. The work comes when you accept another theology that God didn't give you. You thought it was God because you never knew God, so you heard what somebody else said. And you accepted it as God. It did not give you God. It gave you someone's picture of God. God never accepted slavery. He accepted the ones that enslaved people, and he accepted the ones that were slaves, but he never accepted slavery. Many of you are enslaved now in your minds and can't walk free and experience happiness and complete joy because something on the outside only controls your inside. But David said, there is no speech nor language where the voice is not heard. There is no speech. In other words, God's speech that he's been speaking to you, his language that he's been giving you within your heart, it has been at naught because you have played yourself and your emotions to the traditions of men and religion. And it's made you so sick that many of you left church and thought you left God. You hear me? You thought you left God, and people told you that you had left God. Israel went opposite of God, but God says, even that old backsliding Israel I still got in my wedding plan. They couldn't escape me, so how could you? You may be a homosexual. You may be what we call a bisexual. You may be what we call a heterosexual. You may not even be married according to the codes of America, but yet still having sex. But guess what? God's still married to you. I want to tell you the good news of the gospel. He don't hold you in your mess. Your theology holds you in your mess. Am I saying it's okay for you to do what you do? That ain't my problem. I can't deal with what you do. That ain't my business. It ain't my business how you live your life. I want you to understand how God created you to live your life. You in bondage based on what somebody else said. Because, see, God was speaking to you, but you couldn't hear him, so therefore his sound became naught and void. See, God is speaking to you every day, but because it didn't sound the way you thought it should say, or what you heard somebody say it should say, you refuse to follow it. You didn't know how to follow it. David said this here, listen real closely. There is no speech nor language where the voice is not heard. You ain't been hearing God, so therefore God hadn't been speaking to you. But he's been speaking, but just because you ain't been hearing. Therefore David says, what the speech, there's no language where the voice is not what? I'm going to say it again. David said, there is no speech nor language where the voice of God is not heard. The voice of God bears proof, and it brings gifts, and it brings thanksgiving. It brings oneness, it brings understanding, it brings love, it brings forgiveness. So if you can't operate into those few things among the other things and operate freely in it without someone having to push you in it, you ain't heard from God. I had to swallow this before I gave it to y'all. This came fresh off the press to me. I'm looking for people to do things that you call, to help, to come alongside me, God, that you call me to do, but it seems like nobody can see or hear the vision. He says, you ain't heard it all. He said, because if you hadn't heard it all, then they would hear it all. See, God speaks to you where when he speaks to you, it permeates through you and it shines over the whole world. That's why he says, don't hide what? Under a bush. But you put the light where? Where it gives light off to all creation. Amen. All the creation. That's why I told you about fear. There's some things that's in your heart, but fear has just shut it down. Fear people ain't going to hear. Fear people ain't going to work. Fear that you don't have enough confidence or wherewithal to make it happen. Somebody fear, so afraid to stop taking that medicine that's been killing them. I ain't telling you to stop taking your medicine. Don't you hear me? Don't you hear me like that? Don't you hear me like that? I said somebody's so afraid to stop taking that medicine that's been what? Killing them. Did you know that everything that you need that pertains to your body, God created it and put it in herbs? The medical field will not tell you that. In fact, many naturalist doctors have been killed, murdered, Over 250 of them have been murdered in the last 3 years.
Yes, yes.
Well-known herbalists have been murdered all over the world because the medicines that they've been giving them that came from herbs have been putting the pharmaceutical company out of business in several areas. So they murdered them. Let me tell you something. I was in this meeting. Many of them told me not to say what I was saying. And I said, listen, unless you can learn to serve me before you police me, don't send your boys in my neighborhood and expect me to accept their nonsense. I'm not going to be fearful. They said, why would you say that? And we was about to do something, do a demonstration. They said, these kids are involved. I said, let me tell you something. Before I teach my kids to fear, I'll teach them to give their life and go ahead and die. Because if they've got to live in fear, they're not living.
That's right. That's right.
They're not living. They're not living. I'm not afraid to say what I say. Not that I'm bold and bad. It's just that I refuse to live in fear. Fear don't feed me. It takes from me.
Right.
It don't feed you. It don't cause you to prosper. It takes from you. And so I say, if they can't be free, I'd rather be dead than be enslaved. That's why I live my life, and that's why I teach them. Carry yourself with respect and dignity, but never walk in fear. David said, their line is gone out throughout all the earth, and the word to the end of the world, in which he hath set a tabernacle for the sun, which is the bridegroom coming out of the chamber, and rejoices as a strong man to run a race. His going forth is from the end of the heaven, and his circuit unto the ends of it, and there is nothing hid from the heat thereof. The law of the Lord is perfect. The law of the Lord is perfect. Now watch this. The law of the Lord is perfect. And watch what it says. Converting the soul. The law of the Lord is perfect. Converting the soul. Where's the soul? Your mind, your will, your intellect, your imagination, and your emotions. What's the law of the Lord? Many of you have heard that it's the scriptures. Or it's the 10 Commandments. David said, I will hide my law, your law where? In my heart, that I transgress not against you. He says, the testimony of the Lord is sure, making wise the simple. You that thought you didn't know, you got some power in you that just hadn't been discovered. You that think you simple and ordinary, he's placed some jewels inside of you that the system of fear and degradation have shut down. You that thought you were crazy and losing your mind, you just as wise and got more ideas than some of them that stand up there calling shots over you. I want you to stand tall in what he created you in. And guess what? He didn't need the... How in the world did John hear from God to write, in the beginning was the Word was God, and the Word was with God, and what anything made, that was made by God, who is the Word. And all things exist because of the Word. So, how could John hear from God, but you can't? John didn't have a Bible to hear from God. You ain't got to have a Bible to hear from God. Your problem is you contacted a theology that don't produce God. God speaks to every homeless person that ever walked the face of the earth. God speaks to every rich person that ever walks the face of the earth. God speaks to every, what we call subculture, third world country person that ever walked the earth. Why? Because God inhabits his creation. Because they don't respond as you, that don't mean God ain't speaking to them. Right. That don't mean God ain't speaking to them. Right. I want you to get this correct. God is talking to people, and he's keeping his people, and he's sharing with his people, and because he don't do it based on your theology, that don't mean God ain't spoke. You can't put him in your requisition box and expect him to do all that you say do and not do for nobody else. I say, you homosexual, you ain't heard from God. Who are you to tell God who to speak to? When did you get up and throw some stars up in the sky? When you put the moon over there, when did you take your finger and make the river wise? Who is you now to give God theology and to give him direction and tell him he ain't spoke to them? When were you able to put him in a box? How can I tell you that God ain't spoke to you? I'm trying to tell you he is, and you heard from him. You just hadn't learned to respond to what you heard. Somebody said confirmation. You've been empowered not by me, but by the God that created you.
That's right. Amen.
Now, the only way I can empower you is if you give me the power to empower you. Whatever you give yourself over to, you will give yourself over to it to become a slave to it. You don't need to be a slave to your pastor. Somebody look at your neighbor and say, amen.
Amen. Amen.
Your pastor don't need slaves.
Right.
He's supposed to be raising people up with dignity, quality, and integrity that's already within him. He can't give you what he ain't got. All I can give you is the power and the word of God that speaks to me. Now, you do with it what you want to. But the word says, David the writer says this here. The statutes of the Lord are right, rejoicing the heart. The commandment of the Lord is pure, enlightening the eyes. Where did David get these commandments of the Lord? If the book wasn't written, so where did David get them from?
That's right. He heard God talking to him.
Y'all hear him knocking.
That's right.
Where did David get this information from? Can anybody tell me?
That's right.
Where did John get the information from?
From the Holy Spirit.
Where did Paul get the information from? Where did Obadiah get his information from? Where did the writer of Genesis get his information from?
That's right.
So you guys stopped at their revelation. You guys stopped at their Genesis revelation. You stopped listening to God and you start listening to man.
Yep, so did.
Where did they get their Genesis revelation from? In the beginning was the word.
That's right.
They got it from a mindset that they heard from God. And now that's all you've been trying to hear is what they said in Genesis. You haven't been hearing what they've said now in 2018, what God said to you without the book.
That's right.
If God said it to them and they didn't have a book, would he not speak to you without one? Then if he won't speak to you without the book, then he has to be a respecter of persons. Am I saying throw the book away? No. It's good for inspiration. It's good for instructions. But as I read your instructions, I'm reading what you had to say too. I'm looking for the original. See, the original is only in one place. Your originality ain't in me. And my originality ain't in you. My originality is in me, and your originality is in you. Why? Because we're created all where? In the image of God with an originality and with a purpose. I wasn't created like David, or like in auspices of David. I was created in auspices of Charles.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, until my mother called me Charles.
Yeah.
But I was created as what I'm doing.
That's right.
In fact, you think God's worried about your name? You're trying to perpetuate a life based on what your name is.
That's right.
I hear the sound of God. And he sounds just like me. I hear the sound of victory. And it included me.
Right.
It didn't escape me. I don't care what you've been through. Victory hadn't escaped you.
That's right.
You heard a theology that robbed you of it. But when the sound of glory comes,
That's right.
and it breaks the shackles and the chains, You begin to walk free of what you've been bound in your mind, and you heard something that now, wait a minute. I heard of God, but now I know God. You said he works in your life, but I know he works in mine.
Amen.
Because what I've been doing, what I've been now doing and reconstructing my life, it's been working. The way you constructed my life and where I believe it didn't work. Somebody told me because I drank I was going to hell.
Go ahead.
So you mean to tell me that I'm going to hell because I drink? I'm going to hell because I smoke? I'm going to hell because I told a lie? I'm going to hell because I had sex last night with somebody that the United States says I'm not married to? I'm going to hell now because, wait a minute. What did Jesus do at the cross then if hell is still available? You tell me that I'm greater and what I do is greater than what he did? Then we don't have a God that we need to serve. Then if what Jesus did at the cross ain't strong enough to get you to heaven, and if he told the Pharisees that the kingdom of heaven is where? Then why am I trying to go somewhere? Why am I trying to wait to get to heaven when if he said the kingdom of heaven is within me? Revelation knowledge pulls you from the dust of the grave. There is no grave that can hold me. Because if the grave won't get me when I die. The dust will. What you see here, the dust gets this. Because all in the grave is dead things. I live forever because he eternally lives in me. You live forever because he eternally lives in you. The grave is not my resting place. It's only the place where the shell goes to. The person that you hear now is not this physical body. It's a spirit that rides within this body, that animates this body, that gives the soul reaction. The law of the Lord is what? It's perfect. And what does it do? To the conversion of the mind. The law of the Lord is perfect. It ain't flawed. So if your mind hadn't been changed and you still going to church and dealing with things, maybe you don't understand or haven't heard the law of God explained to you. You've heard theology and religion, but you haven't heard God. See, many people profess about God, but many of them know him. We have many teachers, but we don't have many fathers of God. We have fathers of ideologies and relationships that produce ideologies and things of man. But the things of God is inclusive of all men. There's not one purpose that God will give you that won't include all of humanity. Because everything that God did includes all of his creation. He said the whole earth is his and the fullness thereof. The whole earth is in moaning and groaning and was waiting for the manifestations. In other words, for you to come out of where you are and this dogma of theology that only enlightens a few people. But he says all of creation was moaning and groaning, waiting for the manifestations of the sons of God. That's right. We all are. That's right. Stand to your feet. I want you to look around and begin to proclaim. Yeah. You are the Son of God. Son of God. Begin to point your finger. You are, and why somebody pointing their finger and some pointing back at you? You are the Son of God. You are the Son of God. I'm waiting for the manifestation of the sons of God. You are the sons of God. You are the sons of God. You ain't sons of bitches. You are sons of God. You ain't sons of heifers. You ain't sons of dogs. You are sons of God. That's right. Oh, it may seem wrong, but I want to get to you. You got some rawness in you because so many times when you leave here, you do some raw things. So you might as well get the rawness in here.
All right.
You are the sons of God. Amen. You are the sons of God. Rise to the occasion. You are the sons of God. These things ain't got no business controlling you. You are the sons of God. You have the right to decree, not only decree, but watch it come to pass. I'm looking for wholeness and fullness to be in operation. It ain't that you got to get wholeness. I'm saying that you're already whole. It's just you don't understand it. Why? David said what? He said, there's a sound in the language. If nobody heard it, then it wasn't what? It wasn't a language, neither was it a sound. I want you to hear this sound, that it becomes a sound, this language, that it becomes a sound to you.
That's right.
Hear the sound of victory. Hear the sound of power. Hear the sound of prosperity, that it becomes yours. See, prosperity shouldn't pass you by.
That's right.
The reason it has because you ain't heard it. You heard something else. You heard that you couldn't get it that way. You heard that wasn't for you. You heard that somebody's always going to be holding you back. And somebody's always going to be in front of you. Who's going to hold you back other than what you believe? Who's going to hold you back other than your belief? Reason I'm doing what I've done because I believe what God told me that I would be doing it. I saw this when I was 12 years old where I was standing at. And guess what? I got 25,000 more to do. The number I seen, I couldn't count it. But have you seen that many? I seen it. So you know what propels me to go forward? Even when there's two sitting here? What I heard. You got to hear the sound that it becomes noise to you. You got to hear this thing that it becomes vision to you, till it becomes prosperous to you, till it becomes health to you, till it becomes strength to you. You got to begin to hear this, Ethel. Mr. White, I know you hear it, son. Mike, I know you hear it. I know you hear it, brother. The fear of the Lord is clean, enduring forever. The judgments of the Lord are true and righteous together. More to be desired, and they are they than gold, yea, than much fine gold, sweeter also than honey and the honeycomb. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping of them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. David said, cleanse thou me from secret faults. I'm in the 10th verse. No, 11th verse. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and in keeping of them is great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Cleanse thou me from secret faults. See, what you are not willing to uncover and undo, you can't get free from. What you can't announce out openly in the public, you can never overcome. Neither can you dominate it. Why? Because it dominates you enough that you can't open up to it and allow it to be exposed. My wife and I don't agree all the time. We argue less now than we have ever in our lives. Amen. Because we've matured. Amen. My wife and I have slept in the bed, she slept on the couch. She slept in the hotel, and I slept in the bed at home. Amen. So what I just tell you, we didn't have a perfect marriage. But we're perfect people trying to learn how to resist the imperfectness of our own selves. You are perfect right where you are. Don't you try to change your mess in order to be grateful with God. I know what the church has told you, that God ain't ready. You got to change it before you can be used. I need a musician right now. I need a drummer right now. I want a drummer. I want a musician. And guess what? If he come in off the street, he can be smoking crack. Guess where you're going to see him at? If he can play that thing, I'm going to put him right there. Yeah, if he's smoking crack. If I know he got 10 babies out there, about 10 women, he can play the drum, I'll put him right there. And let him play the drum. You know why? Because his disposition ain't got nothing to do with God's position in his life. You better learn that your disposition ain't got nothing to do with God's position in your life. You're positioned for truth and being popular in the kingdom of God. God made you that way. Don't allow what people have called your sin to shut you down. Moreover, by them is thy servant warned, and keeping of them there is great reward. Who can understand his errors? Cleanse thou me from secret faults. Keep back thy servant also from presumptuous sins. David is begging God to keep him back from presumptuous sins. Wow. David is begging God. He's begging for God's grace. Many of you are begging for God's grace to change your situation. Many of you are wanting God now to intervene for things to happen in you and your family's life and in your financial situation and in the place you live in or in the workplace or with the racism that's going throughout seems to be going throughout the land now. I want to tell you, racism ain't as big as you think it is.
That's right.
Because there are more people walking in love than there are people that's racist.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes, it is.
There are more black and white people and Chinese people and Indian people that are walking in love and in agreement with each other than there are people that are on the opposite side trying to cause mess and trouble between all races.
Right.
So I want you to tell you, don't be distracted by what you see, but be who you are, and that's a creature of love.
That's right.
He says, keep back thy servant from presumptuous sin. Let them not have dominion over me.
That's right.
David says, please don't let these things have dominion over me, God.
That's right.
What's he doing? David is operating in sin. He's admitting that he's in sin.
Yeah.
But he's still going where?
To God.
Come here. Come here. Well, I need 2 volunteers. Real quick. Hurry. Hurry. 2 volunteers. Since they always call sin darkness, you got on black. I'm going to let you be. But you got on black too. You got on blue and gray. Oh, they look like black on the camera. You got on blue. Oh, you be sin and take out your white there. You can't have that white on. You sin. Since sin is always a coming with darkness, hold me. Grab hold of me. You be God. You God. Lift your hands, please, God. I'm trying to get to God, but sin got to me. This is what David was doing. Many of you are God is standing right here for you. But this is what you do before you get to God. Come on here, God. Oh, but see, sin still got you right. Whatever you troubling with, it still bothering you, right?
Right.
But did God move?
No, ain't gone nowhere.
He's still right there, right? So why is that God so far from you? But yet he's so close to me. It's an examination of the mind. Why is it that people can tell you that you need Jesus? That'll change your life. But not understand that the thing that's troubling you is what's in your mind. If I get free and recognize that sin ain't really got me, I turn around and do this. And I embrace the power of God, but yet guess where it's sin? It's still where? It's still there.
Yeah.
Now sin, come on, jump with me and God.
That's right.
Guess where God is? Did he move from me?
No.
Love, you can't separate yourself from the love of God. You can't separate yourself from the love of God. Quit letting these false doctrines keep you there.
That's right.
That's true.
You have a theology that's produced nothing but separation from you. If it don't send you to God, it ain't from God.
That's right.
Amen.
Last thing David says, thy servant also from presumptuous sins. Let them not. Don't let them sin. Them problems I have dominion over me. Don't let this alcohol control me, God. Don't let this cocaine control me, God. I want to be free. I want to be free. I want my mind. God, they say I'm crazy, but I don't think I'm crazy. But the world don't receive me. The world don't receive me, God. God, I've been had sugar diabetes. They say I was born with it. It was hereditary, God. Your word says I'm healed, but I don't want sugar diabetes, God. I got high blood pressure, God. They said that I'm going to die with it because my mama them had it, and there's no real cure for it. God, but I know there's a change. There's a bomb in Gilead, I heard. David says, they have dominion over me. He said, if you don't let them, God, then I shall be upright, and I shall be innocent from the great transgression. In other words, people have cast me out, God, because of my lifestyle. If you're homosexual and you're standing out there, if you're bisexual, and you still got a desire for both men and both women, I want to tell you, the greatest thing that's wrong with you is that your fear of being discovered. Not uncovered, but being discovered. Because you're already uncovered to God, you just don't want man to discover you. When you understand that fear separates you from the love of God, you'll dispel that fear. Then maybe that thing that holds you will then loose you. I had a fear of not being accepted at one time. When I got past that, guess what happened? Shoot. I forgot about those that I thought about that wouldn't receive me. I became one of the majority. not the minority.
That's right.
You get that?
That's right.
I became the majority rather than being the minority.
That's right.
My color, my skin shouldn't make me the minority. But in this system in which we're in, they says I'm a minority. But in Christ, I am the majority.
That's right. Amen.
You better get this. You better get this. I hope it's just not. In other words, there's a sound, as David says. There's no speech nor language where the voice is not heard.
That's right.
I hope this is speech to you. I hope this language that you're hearing it.
That's right.
David says, let the words of my mouth. See, David's talk has changed. His talk has changed. His revelation, his understanding changed, which changed his disposition and perpetuated him into a place of the kingdom and the king. You get this? He said, let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. O Lord, my strength and my redeemer. David recognized that you ain't my strength because you don't believe in me. You ain't my redeemer because you can't save me. I don't care what I've been through, I've been redeemed.
Right.
I am the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. Somebody shout hallelujah. And the glory of the Lord shall fill his temple. And the saints shall go in shouting, glory, glory, hallelujah to the risen King and Savior. Because he's risen in me, therefore he lives forever and ever. Father, I thank you for everyone that's heard this. I thank you for the sound of the voice, God, that you've spoken and released into the kingdom of your people and to the hearts and minds of them, God. I thank you for the fruit, God. I thank you that they now know that they are the sons of God. And that you, oh God, are manifesting yourself through them, that the scripture has been fulfilled, that when they heard, now they live. Thank you for the transformation and the reformation. In Jesus' name. In Jesus' name. With all the church that loves him, say amen. Amen. Hallelujah.